Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Genetic Genius podcast. I'm so thrilled today to have my guest, Dr. Isabel Sharkar, and we're going to be talking all about how to shift your DNA with the subconscious mind. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lulu. Such a pleasure to be here.
Yay, thanks for joining us. And before we dive deep into the subconscious, I'd love for you to talk about a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to the listeners so they can get to know you a little better.
Sure, I would love that. My name is Dr. Izzy, and I have an integrative, holistic, functional medicine practice in Washington, D.C. and Georgetown. We've existed for over a decade, and I am a naturopathic doctor. And I'm launching a new program called Creatress CEO Unleashed, which is really about having a bigger conversation with women around burnout and what it really means to like heal yourself from the inside out and how to heal on a mind, body, soul level and how to also serve from a place of wholeness. And so that's been my passion at the moment, as far as like really just diving deep into these bigger questions.
I love that. That's so amazing. That's really our model of the future, which we're going to be talking a lot about today, is how we can really dive into that. And I love, of course, that you're a naturopathic doctor like myself. And what school did you go to?
I went to Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine in Arizona, and then we started a clinic in Georgetown by the name of Indigo Integrative Health Clinic.
Nice. That's great. I love that school. It's just a beautiful environment in Arizona there. And I went to Bastyr in Seattle. Totally different climate, but it's a super fun school as
So
well.
different.
Yeah. I needed the trees and the greenery, I think, for my healing journey.
I totally get it. I had no idea I was a desert girl until I went into
Mm.
Arizona and really just like discovered these aspects of myself I didn't even know existed that the desert brought out. So I think we
Yeah.
both found what we did.
Yeah. So true. And where did you grow up?
I grew up, so I was born in Bulgaria, and then
Mm,
around age 6, we came to America and basically Virginia,
nice.
Washington, D.C. is where I grew up before I left for Arizona for naturopathic medical school,
Nice. So you came
and then
back to
moved
your
around
roots.
a bit after. Yeah, yeah. So now I'm actually in Portugal.
Oh,
I'm between
wow.
Portugal and Washington, D.C.
That's great. I haven't been there. It's on my travel wish list, though. I've always wanted to go.
Um,
I have to come visit
I
you.
love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm. So I'm super excited for us today to really dive in and talk about how to shift our DNA through the subconscious. And I'd love for you to first kind of talk about like the holistic model or the model of like wholeness. And what does this really look like from our new perspective of health, the future of our health, and how is that changing?
Sure. So as far as like we know Western medicine right now, we have all the different body parts and like experts and specialists and all the different things thinking that they don't actually communicate with one another. And so when we look at naturopathic medicine, as you know, we do look at how there's healing powers of nature and also how the whole body communicates with itself. And most importantly, the future of medicine is being able to heal the mind, the body, and the soul. And it's within this golden triad, within this integration and alignment that we have true health and true well being. Because
Mhm.
if you, for example, like if you're thinking all the wrong thoughts, or there's like self loathing, or there's personal trauma or past trauma that's stuck in the body, and we're not addressing that, we're just focused on the body and giving the body, medicine or supplements, but we're not addressing these other areas, then you're one third whole. If we
Mm-hmm.
are failing to address the mind, the body, and the soul together, we don't have true health and well-being and wholeness. And so it's really important to start having these bigger conversations around what does it really take for us to feel whole and to heal and to feel healthy.
So true. I love that. That's exactly my philosophy as well. That kind of holistic model, which I love that you mentioned how we're in this current state of health, well, from the typical like MD model where just heal the part, right? You have this, and I can't do anything else to help you, so go see this person, and then go see that person, and you end up seeing like 30 people and have a list of 30 different pharmaceuticals you're on. Like, who said that was a wholeness model? That is failing us.
The sick care model, the
Right,
way that
exactly.
medicine is right now is it's a sick care model. And what we want is a health-based model.
Mm.
And so there was a really interesting quote from Medicare Journal that was talking about how if health has anything to do with like optimization and true health and well-being, they're not interested in it.
Right. That's
There's no
crazy.
coverage for that.
Right. I know, which is really horrible.
It's horrible. It doesn't promote health. And so, as a society, we really need to start taking our power of health back into our hands so that we can promote health and have true health. And so,
Mm.
that's a very deep topic that we can address as a society. But first, our society needs to get out of pain and suffering
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
really embody what health means so that we can have these bigger conversations. You can't have big conversations if you're suffering and
Mm.
you're in pain.
Right. Yeah. And thriving in the pain, which I think that's the other piece, is that our society is almost, perpetuating that model with like feeding, like, okay, you got this. Well, here we'll just suppress it a little bit longer and we'll continue to give you this particular, like for pain, like an opiate or some other pain relief, instead of really addressing what's going on, like you're just saying. It's so, yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
root cause medicine.
Exactly. Yes. And so if we're talking about this new perspective of health, how do we are we currently having a shift? Are you seeing it like in your work that you're doing, like a paradigm shift in health? Are you seeing it like being like active and brewing?
I definitely am seeing a paradigm shift. I know sometimes it feels really hopeless out there and it feels like we're not really making big, taking big strides, but what I'm seeing is that we are. There's definitely a huge like wellness industry that's taken a life of its own. There's a momentum. And so it's growing. And I think people are starting to take more self-responsibility and they're also looking outside of the box, especially outside of the insurance-based coverage model. And they've experienced what it means to stay within this broken system, and they're looking for answers outside of that. And so they're coming into holistic, naturopathic, functional medicine, looking for answers, looking for the root cause. And so there's a lot of clients that are calling us, for example, at the clinic, and they're like, I just want to get to the root cause. And the fact that they're saying that and it's a part of their terminology shows and signifies that there is a huge paradigm shift of people really wanting that root cause. And that's exactly the direction that we need to be going in.
So true. Yeah. And I think that terminology, you're right, it is becoming more, I wouldn't necessarily say mainstream, but yeah, I mean, maybe it is. I think people, the vocabulary they're learning when they're in, like you said, in the typical model, that it's failed them. And so they're looking for alternatives. And I don't even like the word alternative, because I actually like hate that word because it's not really an alternative, right? It's the new space of health, and they're looking for something new to help them to really heal. It should be, I don't know what that new word is, but it's like,
It could just also be a return to nature or a
right.
return to wholeness or just a return to as well. Because in the beginning, we had nature and that was our top priority. And then we had pharma come in and
Mm.
basically take over. And so now it is a bit of a return while we're still progressing and moving forward. So maybe that would be a
Right.
better terminology to use.
Right. Yes. Back to nature. I love that. Yeah, that's so true. And I think that it's like a realism, a reality based medicine too, is that people are like, oh yeah, they're waking up and realizing, hey, what I've been trying isn't really working. So I needed to try something out of the box, right? Something that is not the norm, but that I've been hearing about, like, behind the scenes, like, oh, you're doing that. What are you doing? You're feeling so good. And what is that? So I can try it too. And I think that's like the undercurrent.
People want to feel good.
Exactly. They're meant to feel good. And that's why they're here on the
You
planet.
deserve to feel good. It's your
Yeah.
birthright to feel good.
Yes, totally. And so when we're talking about like embracing this new paradigm of health, how can we do that and really like let go of the old codes that are like so ingrained in our society around health, and especially as women, because I know that's an area that you really specialize in, and myself, and like how do we really help to empower those women to let go of those old things that are holding them back?
That's such a great question. So I feel that we have we come with limiting belief patterns that we've been programmed throughout the course of our lifetime. So whether it's ancestral or from our parents or societal or the school system, so we have these programs that we've had, especially the first 7 years of our lives is when the brain is molding, and that's when it's really absorbing everything that we hear. And so when you're looking to create the life of your dreams and you're looking to come outside of this, like to rise above this karmic path that we're originally on, it's really important to start asking questions about how do you really want to live your life, and start taking ownership for how your external reality is really a reflection of what's going on within you. And so when we start assuming that responsibility, then we are able to shift the questions that we start asking, because we're not blaming people outside of us anymore. We start becoming what I call the ultimate creatresses of our lives, where
Mhm.
we are the ultimate creators and we take responsibility for our creations. And so through that responsibility, we start looking at how the power of our subconscious mind is affecting our current reality. And I always feel like my fundamental belief is that if my current reality is not what I genuinely want it to be, then there's something going on with my internal equation that I need to really become aware of and observe, which means what limiting belief patterns that keep showing up for me, what limiting thoughts do I have every single day that are not aligned with this new vision or this new reality? And how do I start unpacking that? What are the blockages around allowing myself, for example, for it to be easy in life, as opposed to thinking that everything that I do has to come from a place of hardness?
Mm.
And so there's these like fundamental questions that you're able to start unpacking and looking at and asking when you assume that responsibility. Because what we've noticed in private, like in at the clinic with our clients, we've noticed that the mind is oftentimes the biggest obstacle to cure, because you can be doing all the right things in the body. You can be detoxing, you can be eating right. But if there's some underlying mental things going on, as far as your thought patterns or how you actually perceive what healthy means to you, or, if there's like self-sabotaging things going on, or either trauma that hasn't been dealt with appropriately, that's going to affect our reality current and also the reality that we want to manifest. And so it's for me, the power of the subconscious mind as one of the hidden things, one of the hidden secrets that we really need to look at and start to understand our thought patterns, how we process information, and also like start evaluating the thoughts that we do have and what are the things that are keeping those in place.
Mm, so true. Yes, I love that. And the subconscious is really coming into play, I think, more and more, like you were mentioning, excuse me, with limiting beliefs, right? And looking at if you're ever doing everything right, like you said, there's something has to be needs to be shifted that you're not addressing, right, to move forward. And I think that piece has been almost like hidden from even from the naturopathic perspective. We're taught lots of different ways to help access our patients healing or help ignite it within them, but with the subconscious mind or that mindset piece, it's just, I think the naturopathic medicine field is just brushing the surface of that, right? And some of us, like you and myself, are like stepping out of that and be like, well, this has to be a place where we can really ignite our patients ability to heal within themselves when we open their glass glasses up really big and like, okay, let's really dive into what's going on here instead of it just brush the surface and be like, oh, it's just your thought process. You'll fix that. Just do some meditation or do some journaling, it'll work itself out. Right. And I think I love what you said about really diving in and opening the subconscious box. And can you talk a little bit about what the subconscious mind is? I think that is like, a little bit of the mystery, I think, within people sometimes.
I get it. Well, I mean, the subconscious mind is mysterious, it's invisible, but at the same time, so the conscious mind is what, it's our day-to-day thinking. It's the things that we know that we're thinking about. It's the things that we have awareness of. And the way I look at the subconscious mind is that's the layer deeper. It's the driving factor of why we do the things that we do that we aren't aware of, that we don't know, that isn't so obvious to us. And so when we go deeper into the subconscious mind and we start working with it, the first thing is the first thing is, let's say you have a thought and when you start becoming aware of a thought, that's when you can actually start accessing the power of the subconscious mind. Because if you're not aware of something, you can't change it because you don't even know that it's broken. You don't even know that there's something that needs to be looked at or that it's part of a failing equation. And so the first thing is catching ourselves and becoming aware of what it is that we're consciously thinking all the time. And so another thing that comes to mind is, for example, New Year's, the whole new year is coming up. And so we have New Year's resolutions and we're going to want to be more healthy and we're going to start working out more. But then, for the first week or two, you're very conscious about making this new shift. And then you get distracted with life, with family, with kids, with work in your career, with some personal things that are going on. And all of a sudden you go back to the way that you used to be. And there's no more room for this new conscious pattern because it hasn't taken root or taken place for it to actually become a habit. And two, like the old program comes in. So that's kind of like the difference between the subconscious and the conscious. It's like the subconscious is like the program that's running in the background that basically has like that dominant factor. And so it's starting to look at that subconscious program and how it's affecting us. And so, for example, if you know that you desire to work out and to be more healthy, but your subconscious pattern doesn't actually believe that you can be healthy or that you deserve to be healthy or that it's possible for you, then it's going to be running that program. And if it's stronger than any new conscious program, the minute you take your eyes off of the conscious program, the subconscious kicks in.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's like a limitation within ourselves that we might be conscious of or not, depending on, like you said, that program that's running in the background. And so what are some tools about how that we can recognize what that program is running in the background? Like, if we don't even know what it is, how do we bring it forward for us to recognize it?
So the first thing would be pattern recognition. To be able to look at your life and say, okay, where am I running into the same pattern over and over again? And what are some of these current patterns that I have that I desperately want to change that are not serving me anymore? Because what I truly desire and the reality that I want to manifest versus what I'm actually experiencing are two different things. And so the first thing is becoming aware of the patterns. And the second thing is accepting yourself with where you're at,
right?
Without
Exactly.
trying to be something that you're not right away. So there needs to be this tender love, care, grace within self, and also a reality and big dosage of truth, a moment of truth of being like, okay, I'm not where I want to be, and that's okay. And so this is where I want to be, and what patterns are keeping me stuck in this current reality. And if you start unpacking those patterns, then you can catch yourself in real time. You can start becoming aware in real time of catching the patterns and then start to unpack them and choose differently. And that takes practice. It's not going to happen overnight. We can't expect it because, neurons that fire together wire together. And so there's certain wirings that we have in our brain that have existed for a very long time. So we can't just expect to run a new program overnight. That
Like
would be
poof.
ideal.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes, we got to
not
hack in there.
realistic.
Right. Yeah. Figure out how to access that pattern and really help to shift it totally. And when we're in that place of recognizing the pattern, what's a tool that we can use for that? Is that like going through and trying to write down some of those patterns, or how do we start to recognize the pattern? I know that seems kind of strange because we might have a pattern that repeats all the time, but I think sometimes they're, like you said, running in the background. We don't always recognize what that pattern is. It's maybe like limiting us or sabotaging us from moving forward for that rewiring.
Yeah, it does require a level of self-awareness, definitely. And also, I think another huge key to look at is what your desires are, like what your
Mm,
core desires are. And if you get super clear on what your core desire is, then you can start paying attention to everything that isn't that.
right.
So it's kind of like the entry point, like the window to the subconscious mind, because you're desiring something very likely different than what you have. And so by knowing what that desire is, what is everything that's keeping you stuck in that current reality? And I would say definitely write it down.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can journal, you can start road mapping it in a way. You can start unpacking it. Okay, so this is my core fundamental belief that's keeping me stuck here. What's behind that? Why do I believe that? Where did I get this from? And then go a layer deeper. What's behind that? And
Mm-hmm.
just keep going deeper and deeper. And then maybe you're going to need to walk away from it and allow it to show up in your life. But
Right.
as soon as you say that you're committed to unpacking something, then it's going to become more obvious to you. And it's going to basically like be in front of your face more. And
Whether you
so
want it or not, right?
pay attention to the signs and start unpacking it and continue to go a layer deeper and deeper and deeper until you're able to shift it. Because
Mhm.
there's a core fundamental belief there that we need to get to in order for us to start shifting it and then replacing it with what we really want. And so if things start to unravel and feel uncomfortable, good. That's how you
Right.
know you're in it. That's how you
Yes.
know that you're getting onto something. So keep at it. Don't shy away from feeling uncomfortable. As a society, we shy away from feeling uncomfortable. We want quick fixes. We want to patch things up. We want to feel good. But you know what? We're human and we're not always meant to feel good. And uncomfortableness is where growth happens. So we have to allow ourselves to be uncomfortable in order for us to really get what we want.
Hmm. Yeah, so true. I love that you mentioned that about being in that uncomfortable place, and that is true. That's when we really start to feel the shift. And unpacking the baggage is not always an easy trip, right? And as part, if you really want to be on the journey of your health, your vision, your wholeness, you've got to take the suitcase off the shelf, fill it with all the crap that you're ready to kind of address and really open your eyes. And I like what you said too about you know um, that as a society, we want to smooth everything over. And that's that old paradigm of health that we were talking about in the beginning,
The
just like, suppressing it, band-aiding it, having the quick fix.
magic
And it's
pill.
yeah, exactly. The magic pill, which we know we're not going to tell you what it is, right? It's like the secret behind the pudding. um, and I think that people are realizing that the journey that they came with or they got to where they are now has been a process. So the process to get to the other side might be a journey too. It's not going to be, you can't say instantaneously. There is healing. That being said, though, I always, when patients ask me, how long is it going to take me to XYZ? I'm like, well, everybody's individualized and you are in charge of your own healing. It can happen quickly if you're on the journey and you want it to, or you're willing to do the work. Do you want to
100%.
yeah, put the things in, open the box up. But if you just want to ride along, be like, and not just
Post.
yeah, right, yes, exactly. And not just like love your symptoms, which I think is like a harsh place to be, but people just like almost like are in this soup of oh, this is my symptom, this is my disease, I'm just gonna wear that coat and I'm not going to take it off, and that is a place where a real hardship for someone that they like, I don't know, I'm not ready, right? And so what do you think about when we're accessing that place of the subconscious mind to turn on the key to being ready? How do you know when your patients are in that compliant place and they're like, okay, so now I'm ready, I'm really here to do the work?
When your why is bigger than your excuses, you're ready to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
When you feel so incredibly uncomfortable with where you're at, that your why is bigger than your excuses, you're ready.
So
And
true.
everybody is going to take their own time in getting to that place. And that's okay. That's totally okay. It's your life. You can take
Right.
as long as you want. It's all on you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, there's that level of respect, and there's no pushing. Like, when you're ready, you're going to be ready. But when your excuses are bigger than your why, then you are your excuses,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
true
You
healing can't
become
take place there.
right. Exactly. Yeah. You become the excuse. Like, it's like you live the excuse. Yeah.
And I think you brought something up really important about the identity. Like, when people have an identity around their sickness, and as uncomfortable as it feels, in a way, it feels comfortable because it's all they know. And so, how do we unpack that as well? And how do we create a new identity? And so, I think it's also a really important question to ask, because I've seen many clients come in and have this identity, and they won't allow themselves to get better, and they will sabotage themselves, and they'll find a million excuses for why this treatment won't work for them. And in the end, they get to be right. And
Totally.
so, this is the power of the subconscious mind. This is it right here in real time, what we need
Right.
to look at and address.
Yes. Yeah, I like what you said, that too. That identity piece and I think that's another aspect that has really shifted, maybe since, I don't know, since the 40s, when we saw the change in our healthcare system, is that a disease was identified, right? Which in some aspects can really help us to see what the root cause is from our perspective. But from the patient perspective, when they're identified as having XYZ, they wear that label, and then it can sometimes even go way deeper, right? It's like they expect this from their family, they expect this from their friends, they expect this from their work environment, all these expectations because they've been labeled for this particular disease. And then also sometimes they're even paid, but like a disability, which I'm not dishonoring that piece in people, but at the same time we're supporting someone who's then thriving in the disability or thriving in their sickness, which is a really bad health model as well.
Yeah. And I think each individual needs to assume self-responsibility to take a really good look at themselves and say, is this all there is? Is this where I want to be? Do I accept this?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, fine. That's okay. At least you know that.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. That self-acceptance piece is really important. And that comes back to what you were talking about with the journaling too. And journaling and I know I made a joke about it earlier, but it's really powerful. I do it all the time myself. But I think it's like there can be a superficial journaling, and then a
Right.
really deep journaling. And that's totally a different style, which I think you were talking about. Really just, like what's going on. And I like how you mentioned too, we're going to shift our conversation to talk about the DNA a little bit, about the heritage and your ancestry, right? Like, what are you bringing forward from your family history, or even from the as women, bringing forward from the rights of women, right? What are we bringing forward? Which I 100% am for the rights of women and our empowerment, but at the same time we've also have taken a lot with us with that, and about overdoing it and working to the bone and we can do everything, which I think is great, but also has hindered us a little bit too in really thriving in who we are and with that divine feminine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Dalai Lama said, and when I think it was in the peace conference, he said that the Western woman will heal the world.
Mm,
And I looked at that and I was sitting with that for a while, and I added to that and said, the conscious creatress will heal the world from a place of wholeness, because gone are the days of us serving from a place of lack, overwhelm, scarcity. And, and so as women, we don't wait for things to be broken for us to start fixing them, which is great. At the same time, we overgive. And sometimes we don't have proper boundaries to give to ourselves first so that our cup overfloweth before we give to others. And so I feel like this is the ancestry piece that is really shifting, especially in my life, is first, I'm going to give to myself and fill my cup. And everything that overflows, I will give to others. Because what is the point of working so hard and sacrificing ourselves to such a degree that we have nothing left for ourselves? No pleasure, no libido, no enjoyment. Like, what's the point?
right, exactly. Yeah. And I think that
Why
a lot
are
of
we
women are like
pushing and
that.
rushing so much?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We're seeing that really come forward, I think, with even with women having autoimmune diseases a lot earlier in life, and then also more of them as well. We're seeing like, okay, the body itself is in rebellion, right? It's like, okay, I'm not happy with this scenario. You need to change. So I'm gonna fight back until you take a stand and fight for yourself.
100% autoimmune is your cells turning against you. It's
Hmm.
like your body's turning against you. And so, where are you betraying yourself to? If you want to take it a layer deeper, it's like, where are you not honoring your greatness, your divineness? Where are you not honoring what your body's communicating to you? Because as a culture, we, especially as female entrepreneurs, we push and we push and we push, and we've forgotten what it really means to be in the feminine portal of receiving. We can get it all done just by receiving our visions and just being patient and waiting. There's a different way of doing things that we have access to as women and human in general. It doesn't just have to be women. Like, we have the divine masculine and feminine within each and every one of us. It's, the masculine gives us structure and direction and a container for the divine feminine to be creative and feel free. And to also receive. And so, where in our lives are we pushing versus receiving? And where are we betraying ourselves that we're having these autoimmune conditions or even infertility because
Hmm.
we have high cortisol levels, and then low libido and no clarity or time or desire for sex and for pleasure?
Hmm.
So there's a cost to our current societal definition of success that needs to be unpacked and reevaluated.
Yes, so true. Yeah, we need to redefine what that is as women, and what does that look like for us, that vision, and how are we going to be in that new place? How are we going to step forward and be like, success looks like this for me? And I think it's, we have come away from the place of individualized success, like what it means to me, and honoring it instead of it being like, oh, well, I see this person maybe like in a magazine, like that's the image of success that I need to thrive for. And I think we're seeing like, well, no, success can be so many different ways. That can just be raising your family, right? It can be so many different things for women and men, right? For as humans, like you were saying. And when we're talking about shifting, I want to go back to talk about that ancestral piece in the DNA for a little bit. When we're opening up that subconscious mind and that box, we're really unpacking it to look at that success piece. How does the DNA come into play? How do we then use the subconscious to shift our DNA to really tap into the place of limitless power or unlimited power, right? And so as women, when we're in that place of like, well, I just want to be this, right? Instead of, like you said, opening up and receiving, how do we open up the subconscious mind to tap into that DNA of ourselves that's not even maybe activated, or that we've brought forward from our heritage and ancestral lines that is like limiting us, that limiting belief pattern? And that was a lot of questions in there.
So we have epigenetics, and we understand through epigenetics that we're able to change our genetics based off of the environment that we create for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so the environment that we create for ourselves also happens through our thought form and what we think every single day, day in and day out. And so let's say the certain thoughts that you have right now aren't even yours. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
they do come from a deep programming, ancestral programming, where you have these limitations that you were born with, and they're second nature to you, the way that you're thinking about them. And let's say that you saw how it played out in your mother's life and your grandmother's life, and maybe her mother's, your great grandmother's. And so, if we're going to start, if we look at that as an example, for example, and you also know that you want something different in this lifetime, then first you need to become aware of the fact that you have this ancestral programming.
Right.
Then you need to know what your new programming desires to be. And then with grace, you start flooding your body and your cells with this new programming until it becomes the overarching theme, or the bigger, more powerful neuronal synapses that happen in your brain. Like, this new wiring needs to happen and take place. And that takes time. And then the more you do that, let's say you have children, then your children start to adopt this new way of thinking as well.
Mm-hmm.
And their children and their children. And so all the work that you do genuinely does matter, especially for your future children. And so when, one of the overarching themes of the Conscious Creatress is our unifying mission that we have together is to leave Earth a better place for all generations to come.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a great way of how we do it, by shifting our limiting belief patterns and changing the future genetics
Right.
of all generations to come. And so for me, that's how we start. Like, that's the power of the subconscious mind on our DNA.
Yeah. So important. And I really like how you talked about the piece of epigenetics, and right, that thought, it's not always thought about. The from that like mindset piece, that piece really influences our DNA. And I think that is almost, to me, like one of the main things I see that influences my patient's DNA, right? It's because when they're in the place of that mindset piece is, you know, I think instead of it being, it's almost like, we talk about the physical body, the mind, the emotional body, the spiritual body. I think that the mind is almost like overarching all of those things sometimes, like you're saying, with the subconscious mind. And we're really recognizing how much every thought that we have influences us, whether we verbalize it or not. It's like, and I think that's a piece you're like, oh yeah, I wish I could fit into those pants, right? Like and when you're in your closet or something, just as an example. And so that can like wave into every thought that you have that faces your day, right? You're like, oh, I want to be this, or I want to be that, or I'm moving into this piece. And how can we then access it? And so when you're talking about moving that, opening up the DNA from that ancestral piece, so important. I love what you said about really helping the planet, having the vision for our future. And we are in control of that with, as, not only from having children perspective, but also just like the interaction, right? Because as a planet, as a unit, our DNA is always shifting and opening up and changing. Even, if we're not really, I think from the scientific perspective, that's not exactly acknowledged. I would say that from my point of view, but I totally believe that as a collective, our DNA shifts and moves and ebbs and flows together. And so, like you said, if we're changing our own ancestral DNA and how it's moving forward and helping our future generations, we're changing the DNA of the planet.
100%. Oh, that's so beautiful. And it's so true. And so anytime you feel powerless, come back to this.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all the work that you do, it's not for nothing.
Right.
And you are that powerful. You are so powerful that you have the ability to change the future of all generations to come just based off of the work that you do individually.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really something to hold space for and to sit with and not just glaze over, because it is a powerful truth.
Yeah, super powerful. I love that you honed in on that because it's true. I think we sometimes don't recognize our own power when it comes to the collective thought process, and especially as women, because we're the wave of the future. I think that we're stepping into our own power again. That's kind of been shifted and changed so much over the past 100 years, and moving into a new place of like, we want to have the softness, the gentleness, the love, the peace, the warm embrace of everyone, and on the planet. And I think that we're seeing a lot of shift in that, in our own health, and how you mentioned with the self-care piece, right? Taking care of ourselves first so that that cup can overflow, and then, just like pour out into all of our communities around us.
Yes. And I want to come back to just that piece that you mentioned really quickly about, I wish I could fit into those pants.
Right. Yes.
Just want to come back to that because it's such a beautiful way to like unpack the power of your subconscious mind just really quickly. So, for example, when you say I wish, wishing is just wishing. It's not going to get you closer to your reality.
Mm-hmm.
When you wish for something, you're going to continue to wish for it. However, when you can start changing the dialect in your head, the dialogue in your head, where you're like, wow, I fit into these pants, and it makes me feel so good. And my body feels so amazing when I'm able to wear my favorite pants. And you start to like embody this new personality. And I know that many people don't want to lie to themselves. I know that's going to come up. And you're not lying to yourself. What you're doing is you're trying on something new.
Right.
You're trying on a new energy where you're like, oh, it feels so good to fit into these pants. And when you start feeling good, guess what happens? You start making positive changes, because one thing leads to another where you're like, wow, I feel good because I get to fit into these pants. And then, you know what? I'm going to say no to that cupcake. Instead, I'm going to have a piece of fruit. And then your external reality starts to mend and mold into this new feeling of feeling good that you fit into these pants. And before you know it, by the law of attraction, you will fit into those pants because you already feel what it feels like to have fit into them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
sometimes it's more important to not underestimate the power of your belief. And sometimes believing will allow you to see in the external reality. Sometimes you need to believe first. This is where trust comes in.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be trust if you already knew and it was just a knowing. And
Yeah.
so it's really just like stepping into this new reality and allowing yourself to feel really good about it, and then attracting what this external reality will bring to you so that you can actually live into it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's so important that you brought that up, Dr. Izzy. I'm glad you went back to that because it's true. If we just wish for something, it's like throwing the penny into the fountain, right? It doesn't really create the reality. And so that can be when we're talking about any place from that chronic disease place, it can be whether you're wanting to release pain or depression, anxiety, you have to embody the new version of you. And that can be a step for people, and I think what what would you say, or what are your like maybe like top 3 things you can provide to help people like really know that they're moving into that right direction, or to step into that new place of being, and to, to go from maybe like from the A to the B can be this huge gap of the Grand Canyon. So what are the small steps that can help to move into that new way, to really open up and access that doorway to that like genetic blueprint, to opening that up?
Yeah. Well, I'm first going to acknowledge the fact that it is challenging. It is challenging. It's not easy. It's not easy when your external reality is showing you one thing and what you want is something different, something better, something that you think is going to bring you peace and happiness and joy and fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
However, you're stuck in a current reality that's not that. And so the first thing is to make a commitment that you will do no matter what it takes to get within obviously divine reason, that you will have this new external reality. First, it's commitment.
Mm.
The second thing is pay attention, because the universe will come in and challenge you. So expect it. Expect the challenges, because the tests will come there. Once you declare that you're going to be something different, everything that is not that will come to surface.
Right.
No, it's coming. This is law. And those who shy away from doing the work won't ever get to this new reality.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know it's coming and you're going to have these challenges, then it's time to start thinking ahead. Okay, when this comes and I'm challenged by my external reality, what can I put into effect? What are my tools that I can have to come back to this new state of being?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is to really unlock the power of our subconscious mind. We need to sit with it in meditation to fully embody what it feels like to have this new reality. And what we need to do, here's the thing. For example, like your body does not know whether or not what you're experiencing is in real time or made up. As long
Right.
as your body is feeling it, it is real for your body. It is true for your body. So your feelings are used as a gauge of what's actually happening within you. And so it's really important to know this, that your body doesn't care whether or not what you're experiencing is in real time or just a thought.
Mm-hmm. Or
And this is
quantum
the
time.
secret. This is like, yeah, this is the gold. Because in the same way, so that's why, for example, like if you're constantly thinking about the past and the pain that you've endured, you
Right.
are flooding your body with pain and the neurotransmitters and the neurochemicals, and you're like hardwiring that pain into your subconscious mind. And that's how the program becomes so thick and so like so prominent and
Mm-hmm.
powerful.
Yeah, rigid. Mm-hmm.
To reverse that, you do the opposite. You start practicing wiring new pathways and new feelings, and you start flooding your body with new neurochemicals, new neurotransmitters. And so it's going to feel awkward and it's going to feel challenging, because you're going to still be looking at this old reality. And yet, just remember your commitment and you
Mm-hmm.
keep coming back. And the most important thing is the rebound.
Mm.
How quickly can you continue to come back to this new reality? How quickly can you catch yourself that you're slipping into your old subconscious programming? How quickly can you be aware? And that's practice.
Totally. Yes. Yeah, I love that you mentioned that being awareness and catching yourself. I think that's when I'm moving from A to B and really moving into a new state of consciousness. I like journal is always my first thing for me. I'm like, okay, well, visioning first, and then journaling, meditating, moving into that new space. And then I always think about like, well, I think about someone who is similar into that vision that I like, okay, well, this person, it has that reality that's kind of similar to what I'm looking for. And like, how can I match like that reality in some way? Like maybe I'm trying to move into a place of making $1 million a year. Right. And so what does that $1 million person look like? How can I walk in the footsteps? Right. And like, like put on the pair of jeans and put on the embodiment fully with every cell of your being. And like you said, it can be that challenging place, but when something comes up and challenges you from the old, the old you're like, oh yeah, how would that new person that I'm trying to be, what would their response be? And that's kind of how I like when I'm trying to shift in something, I'm like, well, how would I respond differently in this situation? Where like, okay, maybe I'm gonna, I don't know what it would be, buy a pair of shoes or something. I don't know. I'm just showing some examples, but like, okay, what would I want to walk in to help identify with that new me, right? And that can be so many different ways. And so from that like chronic health perspective, having the vision of what you want to be, what is that new vision of you? Are you pain free? Are you running free in the field? What does that look like for you? And I think when patients can begin to have the vision of what their new self looks like, then it expands, like, and that can be just simple, like, well, what am I wearing, like you said, and what am I eating, who are my friends, where do I live, what do I drink, how do I go, what vacations do I do? You have to like lay it all out for yourself so that you create the reality, and then you can start to step into it.
Yes, exactly. And also, when you do get triggered back to your current reality, just have grace with yourself. Don't judge yourself that you
Right.
fell back into it.
You're like, oh
Yeah,
yeah.
don't like make yourself feel guilty. Just bounce back
Right.
and keep bouncing back and keep bouncing back. And next thing you know, it will be a completely different reality.
Right. Yes.
Keep flooding your body with the new neurochemicals and keep feeling what it feels like to have this new reality.
Right. Yeah. And I love what you said, just being gentle with yourself and not trying to judge yourself like, oh, I did that again. Oh my God. Like, how did I do that again? Like, it's okay. Right. It's just part of the process. And then how could I do it differently
Mhm.
the next time? How could I have that conversation with my partner in a different way this time to move forward into the new way that I want to be, and I think for patients, I think the hardest part is when they're wanting to really step into that new place, that new self-awareness and place of being, and they feel so like tied to the past. Like it's almost like the armor is so tight from that chronic disease place, and it's like they just like peeling it off, is that sometimes almost seems like the most painful piece. Like, oh God, if
Yeah.
I take this off, like what's going to be underneath there? What am I going to be exposing? It's going to be raw and tender, and how are people going to see me now in this new way? What tools do you use in your practice to help patients like recognize the new vision or to create that new vision of health for themselves?
I also want to just add like the self-acceptance piece here that comes up,
Mm-hmm.
and also to recognize that we're all human and we're
Yes.
all in it together. We're all in it together. I mean, everyone carries their own particular set of baggage that they've and hardships and traumas and self-judgments.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we think we're the only ones and everyone else has it together and they're perfect.
Right. Everybody else has like roses and rainbows, right?
Big fat lie. No one has it together. Everyone's on the same boat. It's just
Right.
some people have been willing to roll up their sleeves and do just a little bit more inner work
Right.
to confront themselves, to look at themselves, and to have those conversations with themselves. So at the end of the day, like I think that's so huge. And so that's one of the main things that I always stress in the beginning, just to have that level of humanness,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that shifts everything. Like when you know that you're not alone, nothing you can say is going to make me judge you and not accept you.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in it together, and it's not easy, this thing called life, being in a human body
That's
and
right.
having all of these like past life stuff that we're carrying and current life and all the things all at once. Like, it's a lot. And so I think that's sorry, I just got really sidetracked with that.
No, that's great. That's it's all good.
What was your original question?
Oh, I was asking about how do you work with patients to help them create the new vision for themselves of health?
Okay. So the first thing that we do is we really like start mapping out what that new vision is. And it's important to sit with it and it's important to get really clear about it because it's through clarity that we're able to start embodying this new vision. And so that's key. And sometimes you don't know what you want and you start off by listing the things you don't want.
Right.
Not to the point where we're going to focus it and attract it to us, but just to establish some clear boundaries.
Hmm.
And then, for some people, it takes more time to really like give themselves permission and allowance to start exploring what it is that they do want. And so we start there. And once you're really clear about it, we start unpacking all the limiting belief patterns, the ways that you self-sabotage yourself, like, inner child work, conversations that need to happen within the mother figure and the father figure without really having those conversations with mom and dad. And there's a process to do that with where you can still have these interactions and get like profound wisdom from it. And also like going through embodying what your optimal version of you looks like.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of clarity that we get from the beginning. And then there's a lot of unpacking that happens when it comes to what are the main blockages that are in the way from you having this vision. And that's where
Hmm.
we spend a lot of our time unpacking those.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Yes, it's so true. I think being able to I like what you said in the beginning about putting down the things that you don't want necessarily, and then pulling out some things from that move into the other category that you do want. Because I think sometimes when we are in that chronic state of ill health or disease, those don'ts are like so in our face. You're just like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be this. I don't. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute, but what do I do want? Right. And switching that vocabulary is so powerful.
And you can take pain, for example, like if you're in chronic pain and you feel so much pain and there's a lot of inflammation, you're going to write, I don't want to feel this pain.
Right.
And then what do I want to feel? Gee,
Right.
I want to wake up in the morning and feel energized and be free from pain and be able to go for a walk or list.
Right. Yes. List out all of the things you do want. Yeah. Yes. I do that myself. And I with my patients, the same thing happen, especially I know you were talking about the new year. And that's the thing I always work with them at the beginning of the year. Like, what's your vision for your health for 2023? And it doesn't have to be from the place of resolution, right? Because that, like you said earlier, that can be a place of not carrying through. But what's the vision you want to create? How can you step into your vision and be like the healthiest version of yourself ever for 2023, or where you are in the moment? And I think that's where we really tap into that subconscious piece as, ooh, it's like fun. It's like opening the fun play box.
Visions are so important. Visions are what steer the ship. If you don't have a clear vision, where are you going? And
Right.
who's steering your ship if it's not you?
Yeah. Are you in control of your ship? That's a big, important one, right? I think that maybe that's the first vision you want to write down. I am in control of my own life. Not even control isn't the right word, but I love being in charge of my life, ruling my life, having the vision for my life, being the creator of my life.
I steer my own ship
Right. Yes. Thank you for
in the
the word.
direction of my dreams, which are A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Right. All the way through eternity. Yes.
Past, present, and future.
Right. Yeah, totally. Well, Dr. Izzy, it's been so fun to have you on this show today. I just loved our conversation. And I want to be cognizant of our time and wrap some things up for us today. So tell us I'll have one last fun question at the end, but tell people how they can find you first of all.
Sure. So I love to be found on my Instagram channel, which is at Izzy Indigo, IZZYINDIGO. That's where I have a lot of really yummy content, and that's my place to be.
Nice.
Also, www.indigohealthclinic.com if you're interested in more health services type stuff. We're definitely doing an overhaul, and there's some really amazing things that are coming up for 2023 with the clinic. But those are the main two places to find me.
Nice. That's great. We'll put those in the show notes for everybody. And also, you have an amazing free ebook. Can you talk a little bit about the Feminine CEO Blueprint?
Sure. So you can opt in and find it on feminineCEOBlueprint.com. And the Feminine CEO Blueprint is a way that you're able to ignite your energy and your joy and your income by unlocking the three codes of pleasure, fem power, and embodied self-love so that you can get everything you want without the self-sacrifice.
Love that. Yes, that's a great one. I was just checking it out too. So listen, if you're tuning in out there, make sure you download that. And that's at feminineCEOBlueprint.com. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. And Dr. Izzy, one last fun question. If you had an unlimited budget, what would you do right now to make the biggest impact on the health and welfare of our planet?
As far as my vision goes, that stays the same. What I would do is just hire a badass team to get me there quicker.
Okay, ding, you got that one. Badass team coming your way. I'm manifesting that one
That's
for you.
it. That would be the main thing. If money were no object, I would just definitely want to get there quicker with the right help.
Right.
That would
Yes,
be
having a
key.
team is so important,
Having
right? As a visionary. Yes, you have to have a good team. I totally agree with that.
definitely.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Izzy. I really appreciate your wonderful conversation on the subconscious mind and you taking the time and being with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Lulu. I had so much fun with you. Thank you.
You're welcome.